So tonight, Revenge, 2017, a movie about revenge. The moral of the story is, don't be a fucking rapist, because women will always fight back. RickRamos.
I was excited to see this movie. I'd heard good things about it, and I was wondering what kind of an examination this would be. In the 70s, in the early 80s, there were a number of low-budget female, just really violent exploitation films that were usually built around the idea of women raped and then seeking vengeance, revenge, and they were always told from a man's point of view. Death Wish comes to mind, Death Wish 2, a film that is notorious that, as much as he hated to give it the platform that he gave it, Roger Ebert gave a no-star review to a movie called I Spit on Your Grave, also known as Day of the Woman, a film that I've really not wanted to watch for some time, but after watching this film, I feel like I need to, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But I was really curious about what a woman's handling of this material would be, and how it would differ, and if it would somehow be a more either sensitive or critical examination of this genre. And I got to tell you, from watching it, if I didn't know that this was a woman director, if I didn't know that this was the same woman who would go on to make The Substance that was released earlier this year and that we talked about last week, there is nothing about it that would have told me this was a woman director, except for the fact that the rape scene was not as gratuitous as a number of those 70s and 80s films were known to be. That being said, I'm really interested on your take of this film, this material, the director, the performances. I will say flat out, this is not a good film. It's an overrated film. It's a film that is a paint-by-numbers, obvious exploitation flick that has an opportunity to do more things with it, but squanders it in a number of ways, in particular for me, character development. That being said, I hand the fucking baton to you and I ask what your impression of all this was.
All right, so the first fucking before we go back to the kind of tradition and stuff that this is in, my first, and remember, we're coming off, for those of you who don't know, we're coming off of having watched The Substance, in order to see this same director. Coralie, what's her last name?
Fargeat. She's French, so I don't know.
Fargeat, I think.
Fargeat.
Coralie Fargeat. So it was like interesting. Okay, there's we did the Substance. We got, if that were a joke, we got to the punchline of that joke. Yeah. We laughed and we said, "Tell me another fucking joke." So we came back this week to, that was her second film. So this Revenge from 2017 is her first film.
Yeah.
So I watch it.
First of all, what were your expectations? Were you hopeful, or did you go into it with
I was curious.
Yeah, so just curious. So not a lot of
just curious.
Yeah.
I mean, I try to stay open minded. You know what I mean?
I think we've said this before. I don't think either of us, or at least neither of us, want to see a bad film. This is especially at this point in our life where it's like, I don't have time to waste on a shitty movie. So yeah, I get what you're saying with that.
Or if it's, I mean, if it's gonna be bad, like I want it to be fucking bad
excessively bad. Yeah.
for yes, for good reason,
Yeah.
so to speak. You know what I mean? Like I
Mhm.
want it to be, or if it's gonna be self indulgent, like go all the way.
Yeah.
Go as far as possible, and at least give me something. You know what I mean? And if it's gonna have no substance, give me, but just please give me style, please. Which this has. So it looks good. It's done well
Mhm.
in terms of the visuals. It's got some cool shots of trees, the desert. I'll say it right at the top. The substance had one particular sequence that was like the payoff.
Yeah.
And this to me had a sequence. It has the peyote sequence. To me was the most fun and interesting, and it's like in the second act or whatever in the of the film, because I was just so the premise of the film is, and we'll jump back in, but in order to get back to this point, I'm gonna walk us through the premise of the film. The premise of the film is you have a French guy getting dropped off in on some property, some kind of like house with a pool, somewhere in some desert. He's there for a hunting trip, we find out, but he's there with his American mistress, young American pretty mistress, and two of his hunting trip buddies or whatever show up a day early, so they're not supposed to see. They're not supposed to see her, but
Yeah.
here she is. She's supposed to leave the next day. So they hang out, they party. Um, We'll get back to that partying because that plays a factor into what happens. But ultimately, the next day he goes to run some fucking errand. So one of the friends rapes her. That sets off a chain of events that leads to them chasing her into the desert, pushing her off a fucking cliff, trying to kill her to prevent her from telling the wife and telling everyone what happened. She doesn't die. We'll get to why she doesn't die, what happens with that. She comes back, revenge. It's rape and revenge. So it's a rape revenge film. In that point where she's thrown off the cliff or pushed off the cliff, she's impaled on some fucking tree. She manages to escape. She has in this heart locket a hallucinogenic drug, peyote. She manages to crawl inside a fucking cave. She has this whole fucking rebirth, fucking getting high fucking sequence, where she smokes it, trips the fuck out, is able to take off the fucking shard of wood, uses a fucking lighter to heat up a beer can that has, as part of its logo, a fucking phoenix.
Yeah.
She cauterizes her fucking impossible to cure wound, but she does it, and is now left with this fucking scar tattoo impression of this phoenix, as if she herself too is rising out of the ashes of her fucking extreme agony and trauma. And she trips balls, she fucking falls asleep, wakes up, and has this fucking crazy, like, she's having this nightmare trauma hallucinogenic experience. That was my favorite part of the film because it snapped me out of the cliches, the tropes, and I started laughing because she wakes up and you think she just wakes up. She has these experiences. Her head gets fucking blown up. Iguanas, maggots, birds. It got a little bit Oliver Stone. It had all these cuts. It was all this stuff, and then she keeps like waking up, and she's actually the director engaging you with this character, and it's quick, but you're just kind of like, oh shit, like I wasn't expecting that. Oh shit, I wasn't expecting that. Oh shit, I wasn't expecting that. So to me, that was the strongest part of the film because it was really using cinema to kind of like fuck with you and to take you for a ride. But then what happened was, what ended up happening with the substance was that it becomes that moment she's doing it. And again, can this really be sustained throughout the film? No, you have to be able to turn it into a roller coaster ride. Otherwise, you get what we got, which was it's like at one certain level, flatline, not flatline, but it's for the most part at one level, and then it peaks at this part where it's like, whoa, and then it goes back to what it was before, and with moments of stuff that's happening in the action that helps boost it. But cinematically, on that level where she really pushes the button, where she pushes the envelope, there's only one sequence in the substance that does that, that really like gets it, takes it to another level, and then one sequence here, the one that I just described, that does that. Other than that, it's kind of the same tropes, and then you go back and you say, well, okay, what's this tradition? You talked about Death Wish. We can go all the way back to fucking The Virgin Spring, Bergman, early 60s, about rape and revenge. Last House on the Left is a fucking remake of that. That's what, early 70s? Mm-hmm. I Spit on Your Grave, late 70s.
Have you seen I Spit on Your Grave?
I've seen clips and I've seen a trailer, and if you see it, there's one trailer out there that it's pretty long, and it kind of shows all the different it goes through, it hints at or points at enough of like how she ends up killing all these guys.
Yeah.
It goes through all of them. So it's kind of like, if you watch the trailer, you pretty much get it. Now it's not enduring the grueling fucking watching of the whole thing. So no, I haven't seen that. So I've seen clips and the trailer. Miss 45, I don't know if we saw that.
I think we saw it together.
We saw it in the theater.
Yeah.
Yeah. Early 80s, Abel Ferrara. Like, that was had its moments, but for the most part, I think we felt kind of like that was it, you know?
I think it's problematic because it's like there's only so much you can do with the genre, and it's I mean, at its core, it's exploitation. Yeah, it's you wonder if it's they're all gratuitous. I'm sorry. I think it's the only way that you can really describe it, where it's taking a pleasure in the victimization, and it's doing. I understand if you attack the viewer in a voyeuristic manner, and you force the viewer to really question their own complicitness in violence. I think Michael Powell did that pretty well in Peeping Tom, and I think he did it to a degree that it kind of fucked up his career, or at least that's the story. I don't know if you've ever seen Peeping Tom. That's a film that we should probably give it a. Oh yeah, we did see it. Yeah, I think it's an exceptional film because of the way it really questions the audience. Now, if Coralie Fargeat had really wanted to make something substantial, she would have done something to the degree that in a way Gaspar Noé does with Irreversible, where as much as I hate watching, and I really, it's really an uncomfortable film to watch. It's the way it's shot is nauseating to a certain degree, and I'm not talking about thematically. I'm talking about the way the camera moves. It fucks with your senses. But that rape scene alone, the fact that it lasts as long as it does, and you are unable to turn away from it, it really calls into question your involvement in what is being depicted on screen. That's why that film is successful. At least artistically successful. This doesn't do that. This doesn't do it in a lot of different ways. I think primarily the problem with this film is that there is no character development. You never understand this woman. You never really get to know who she is she just becomes this force, and she's not a strong enough actress to carry out something where you see you don't get the sense of any kind of power that she brings to it. I'm not sympathetic or interested outside of the fact that you don't want to see something like this happen to a person. But from the perspective of, do I learn anything, or am I forced to question the genre itself or culture as a whole? It's very obvious. The villains are very obvious. This moment,
they're cardboard cutouts.
They're very much so. And this moment where who you believe is supposedly the good guy in it at that beginning, that transformation and the dastardly way, the dastardly performance that it becomes is fucking obvious. So aside from the peyote sequence, which you were definitely more impressed with than I was, because by that point I was just like, this is just, visually this is a cool scene, but it should be in a better movie. I think sometimes when you see something like that, you imagine this should be in a better movie,
Or the movie should be, you should bring more elements, because I think this movie could have been like 10 minutes long.
Yeah, and that's another thing, yeah.
And had it been 10 minutes long with that sequence in the center of it, I think it would have been a stronger film, tighter, faster, because that's what you're doing. This is a rape action hero movie. This is a rape, guns, and gear movie, where what you said, the director isn't really showing you this extended rape, and in that sense, you're not. And what the director's also doing is you're being put in the woman's shoes because of the intense, to use that term, the male gaze of this fucking perpetrator, because he's so fucking creepy and he's so fucked up that you're just kind of like, so there is tension there. But you understand throughout that this is what's going to happen, because, as I said in the beginning, it's a movie called Revenge, about revenge. So there's nothing.
Yeah, there's not a lot of. You're not going to go too far off that road.
You're not. It's the three villains: the fucking handsome blonde boyfriend guy. It's the dark-haired, short, beady-eyed, fucking gross perv guy who's insecure. There's the fat, friendly sidekick guy who, while she's being or about to be raped, he just keeps eating, closes the door, turns on the volume on the TV, that's showing male sports, wrestling and car racing and all that stuff. That's, it seems to be in her, that and fucking Home Shopping, which she seems to always have in her films. It's like guys watch fucking wrestling, women watch Home Shopping. That's this statement that's the statement she's making. And then he goes for a swim. But then ultimately he ends up being not only complicit, but he ends up being worse than almost in a weird way. And then because he's like, oh, this fucking bitch, like and of course he gets it first. So it's the reason why that psychedelic sequence got me out of it, because I wasn't expecting, I didn't know what was happening. I was surprised. I didn't know. All of a sudden, these shots of iguanas. It wasn't just cool, because it was cool.
Yeah.
But But then she's able to use and quickly and not hard, heavy-handedly, the way she doesn't ends up doing in the substance. She's using visuals to, birds. Symbolically, birds can mean different things. She's playing with metaphor. Is it the bird is it a bird of prey? Is it fucking like she's rising out of the ashes like a phoenix, which was fucking heavy-handed and obvious as fuck? Was it, these iguanas, these lizards, these mouths eating? She's telling me more in that sequence in an interesting way, using connections, using metaphor, using a higher level of artistic expression than she is in, cardboard cutout characters, 3 bad guys, rape scene, she runs away, comes back, kills them one by one, and then she goes out like a badass while the helicopter's fucking approaching, and now she's fucking post-rape fucking Rambo girl. You know what I mean? So there's that. You bring up an interesting point where it's like, well, is there a way for you to know that it was filmed by a female? And also, should there be a way? Because it's like, well, at that point, what, this idea of a feminist film, what the fuck, is it a feminist film just because of a woman directs it? No, right? What is a feminist film? Who the fuck knows? These are just open-ended fucking questions. People can have their lists, their criteria for what makes it a feminist film. At the end of the day, this is an action film shot like a music video about rape and revenge. Therefore, it's exploitation. Foreign film, whatever, because it's some French director and action hero film, but it's about rape. I'm telling you, it's rape, guns, and gear. It's almost cool. What Gaspar Noé does in Irreversible is to show it to be brutal, which is what it is. This also shows it to be brutal, and you're very uncomfortable leading up to it because you're like, fuck. But ultimately, how much does the cool factor outdo the she's not a badass before she gets raped, she's a badass after. And I'm not putting a moral fucking judgment on that. I'm not saying that that's what she was trying to do, but that's what it seems like. And it's kind of like one of these things where it becomes it's almost like you can say, well, the rape itself is just a metaphor for any kind of fucking ordeal. That you go through something difficult and you can fucking become even more of a badass yourself. So it you can almost read it that it minimizes the rape. You know what I mean? There are multiple ways to look at it. Take a slow cinema view of it, which Gaspar Noé does in terms of the length of the rape scene. Yeah. It's how long was that scene?
9 or 11 minutes. I can't remember. The actual rape was, I think, 9 minutes. The scene itself was about 11.
Okay, you're watching this shit for fucking, let's say, 10 minutes.
Yeah. Which is an incredibly long time.
Yes. If people are talking about, going back to the De Palma thing, going back to what we talked about before, where the filmmaker is making the audience complicit.
Yeah.
By virtue of the fact that we're watching it, and in that sense, we're participating. Do you look away? Do you look away or do you watch? Because if you watch, are you watching and you're now participating because you're watching it? Do you derive? I mean, I'm sure those fuckers are out there, but it's like most people aren't going to derive pleasure from watching that scene. But by watching it, it's like there's nothing you can fucking do because you're watching a movie. So it's almost like, well, here you are, you're watching and you're not doing anything. Like, I can't do anything, right?
Yeah.
Or do you look away? is your act of looking away like denying the reality of that scene in that world of that film? Is it in the same sense that you did? And I'm not, I'm just throwing shit out there. But
Well,
what
yeah.
I'm saying is, like, there are ways to do it. There are ways you can do a rape scene. Do you do it from the perspective of the victim / survivor, however you want to describe that person? Is it just a shot of the ceiling for fucking not 10 minutes, 5 minutes? That's long. Do you depersonalize at that point?
No, I think
Does the screen go black?
well, if that's the thing, if you're going to go into it psychologically, you can look at it from the perspective of what somebody would go through with it in order to survive it. And that idea of looking at the ceiling, going to a different place, finding something else that that whole idea of the brain taking over the body in order to preserve itself, that numbness that might have to set in. See, it's very difficult to talk about this from the perspective of the reality of it. The fact is that men, in most cases, not to diminish when it does happen, because it does happen, men don't get raped. Or at least the threat of male rape is
yeah, we don't go outside on a daily basis and are like, well, am I going to get? Is there a possibility that, like, we don't even think of that possibility?
No, we don't. I mean, in fact, we joke about it with going to prison and deliverance and that kind of thing. Men are very uncomfortable.
That's the thing.
Yeah, we can joke about it.
That's the thing.
That's fucked up.
That whole thing about fucking. Some of you must have seen this online, where it's like, do you choose, if you're a woman, do you choose to encounter if you're a woman in the forest and you have a choice between running into a man or a bear, which do you choose? And so you're familiar with this, right?
Yeah, I've heard this.
And so all the women, like, and this is recently that this was like online a lot, and all these women were like, well, I'm taking the fucking bear. Like, I'll take the bear. And then there was like, of course, because it's to everything, there's backlash, because it's like, well, what do you choose, chocolate or vanilla? And then someone chooses chocolate, and everyone's like, you fucking moron.
You diminishing motherfucker. What are you wrong?
Someone chooses fucking vanilla, and it's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah,
so it doesn't matter. But
someone's going to get pissed off. I get it. Yeah, you're right.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because you chose fucking vanilla, you're a fucking Nazi.
We are that fucking fragile. Either a culture or a species. I'm not sure which one. Yeah, we are that fucking fragile.
Right. So then, so fucking, there was a backlash to that, obviously, and it's like, all these fucking incel fucking alpha male fucking whatever dudes, sigma male dudes, right?
Yeah.
Are like, how, like, these fucking idiots, like, you're actually gonna fucking pick the bear? You're gonna and it's like, no, motherfucker. Have you not seen Deliverance? Yeah. You're gonna pick the bear too. Like, yeah. I'm a fucking cisgendered male, and I'm picking the bear.
Yeah.
I'm fucking, depending on what state in the United States it is, I'll pick two bears. Because you know what I mean? It's kind of like, no, motherfucker, like,
because
like,
we're men, we know what men are capable of. That's the thing. And it's like,
why do men fucking not want to go to prison?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just a loss of freedom.
Obviously, it sucks to fucking, yes, it's loss of freedom, but it's also loss of fucking, like,
Yeah.
So
manhood. Yeah.
Then there's the element of, like, another point that someone brought up is like, well, why do men want to learn to fight, or boys? Because they're gonna fight other boys. Because you want to be able to not get bullied. You want to be able to not get,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
dominated. Let's just call it what it is. Yeah. I mean, to be able to stand up for yourself and to be able to choose your own path in your future and what happens to you to the degree in which you are able to control it. Let's be honest. Physically, if I can kick your ass, I stand a little bit higher in what I'm capable of accomplishing. And there's no other way. There's no better way, it's rough to say it better, but there is no more power. There is no more powerful way of controlling somebody than to do that to them. And it's fucking scary. It's very frightening, and it's something that you have to be cognizant of. I finish my job every night roughly at 10:30, and I have to walk out to my car by myself. And I'm let out of the building, and there's a security guard out there whose job it is to make sure that there are no vagrants or this or that, But that 45-second walk from the door to my car, I've never felt like there was a problem. But I'm sure that every woman that walks out of the same store does so with a different gait, that does so with a different idea of what might be out there.
Yeah.
That's something that's foreign to me.
For us, it's like, well, am I going to get mugged?
Yeah.
And that's the primary one. That then the fucking skinhead attacks and all this other shit you can add those things later.
Sure, you can add that into it.
Whatever. Yeah. Whatever. Or if it's a cop,
mm-hmm.
There's gonna be a cop fucking with me. You know what I mean? Like there's all these other elements. Okay, add those together and then add now. Oh, I can get mugged and raped,
mm-hmm.
and then also killed.
Yeah.
So it's talking about controlling of the body, and then to be able to like fight back. That's fucking like kind of. It makes sense that you would have this kind of genre, right? It makes sense that you would have any action film is basically Robert McGee, the story guru, talks about fucking what is action as a genre, but the stakes are life and death. It's not tension only; it's life and death.
Mm-hmm.
And the pivotal moment, the hardest moment in an action film, the hardest moment to write, is at one point in this big film, whatever kind of action film it is the action hero is powerless at the hands of the villain. And somehow, and this happens pro wrestling, whatever. So Indiana Jones, at some point, the hero must somehow find the strength, the will, the ingenuity, the luck, whatever it is, to turn the tables on the villain and to go from completely, James Bond to go anything, completely vulnerable physically to now turning it. And the whole fucking genre, the whole fucking subgenre of rape revenge is like basically turns on that. So, I mean, it makes sense that would be a thing. It's just interesting that the products of that are primarily it's men's product. Sometimes with the Virgin Spring, it's the father.
Mm-hmm.
It's like parents, right? It's like
Death
sometimes
Wish,
it's
the Virgin Spring,
right,
Last House.
Sometimes it's like you have, because at that point you have the hero, the villain, and the damsel. Or you have I Spit on Your Grave, or you have this, or Miss 45, where it's like, well, the damsel in distress must become the hero because there is no hero. And so she herself must become the hero. But it veers into anti-hero because now it's like, now she's Batman, basically. Now she's like, I'm going to be my own justice. But is it justice or is it revenge, right?
Yeah.
2017 justice or revenge. What is the thing for the trailer for I Spit on Your Grave is
No,
it says,
no. Wait a
no
minute. It says
jury in America
would convict her. Yeah.
no jury in America
Well, it
would
says
convict her.
it says this woman has just burned, mutilated, chopped up, and shot all of these men, and no jury in America would convict her.
Right, except
So
in 2024.
Well, yeah.
Except the jury, except the Supreme Court. You know,
Your
except the
body,
jury of
your
J.D.
body, my
Vance.
right. That's
My choice.
that's trending right
Yeah.
now. No, that your body,
Well,
my
yeah,
my
I've heard
right.
this.
Your body, my. What is it? Have you heard this?
Your body, my choice.
Yeah. Get back in the kitchen.
Yeah,
That's
that was
trending
my
right
point.
now.
And apparently they doxed his ass. So yeah.
Well,
But I mean, it's just a crazy. This is just like there's a lot there, but then it ends up, and I'm not one of these. That's why I really don't like Roger Ebert for this reason. Is that I think he's a moralist.
can be, yes. In many cases, yes, I agree with you on that. Yeah.
And I was like, Roger Ebert, you're a fucking weenie. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, and this is kind of, it's a hard balance because, and this is, I think, kind of, I'm going off topic as I usually do, but it's kind of something that I think in general, left-leaning people and left-leaning groups and the left or whatever having to deal with that. It's kind of like being moralistic in a way that's different from the right wing, but it's like you have to be able to deal, if you're going to be that so-called liberal, you have to be able to deal with multiple fucking like subject matters and multiple topics and be able to engage with those things and not just shut down and be like, oh, that's wrong. And therefore I cannot watch a thing about it because it's a barf bag or whatever he described as, and I don't even remember what movie that was. It talked about
the barf bag movie was The Thing. He called The Thing barf bag movie.
Okay, well then you guys say fucking more. That's not even this.
But with I Spit on Your Grave, I think beyond, because I read that review. I read that review a couple of times. He was disgusted by the film itself, but it seemed like he was even more disgusted by the reaction of the theater, the audience to the film, sitting behind some guy who, as Camille Keaton is being raped, he's saying, yeah, that's right. That's what she gets. Fuck her. Or later on, when she's taking her revenge, women going, that's right, girl, get it, get him, get him. You know, he was definitely making a moralistic. He was taking a moralistic stance on what was being depicted. But the film, and I can't say that the film is.
Pardon the Roger Ebert alert.
Yeah.
Fucking alarm in the background. Ebert alert.
The people love the truth of our studios. So, but like, this is the same guy, and I think it's time to bring this up. He was supportive of Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill, which I started thinking about a lot as I was watching this film. I don't know if that I don't know if Kill Bill came up in your head while you were watching it. Did you think of it at all?
Yeah, I was trying to like
Segueing
it
ourselves
wasn't
into
one
it.
of the prominent ones. No, it wasn't. No, as I was watching it, it wasn't one that was prominent. But I did think of Kill Bill, and I also thought about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because it just
Hmm.
violence against women, revenge, turning things on their head. In Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's like this time it's it's men's revenge against history, right?
Yeah.
The same thing that he did with killing Hitler. It's going back and rewriting history as a form of revenge, as a form of setting things right. So somehow,
Yeah.
and 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 I mean, and I just thought of this, but it's like, well, his his feminist fucking revenge sequence in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is fucking the the female dog that bites the balls off of fucking Tex
Yeah.
Watson. Which that dog is a female dog, so therefore Quentin Tarantino thinks that the exactor of revenge on Tex Watson is a bitch. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Kind of obvious, but yeah.
But not.
Yeah.
But these are just weird things that we're playing with, and it's kind of like, well, it's what do you do? I mean, if you're a creative person and you want to play with these, whether you're trying to make statements or not, you are making
Yeah.
statements, and
Sure.
and if you're engaging in these kind of, or what if the story just kind of fucking like, this is a story that just comes to you and this is a story you want to tell. Now, unfortunately, you have to fucking deal with the heaviness of these things. And I think sometimes people are, maybe it's kind of like, look, I'm not trying to write an essay. I just want to make a fucking movie. And this is what's in the movie. You guys fucking fight out what it means. You guys, and I think that's to a certain degree valid too. But it's like, it's very messy. And art is messy. Life is messy. People are messy. This shit is just fucking crazy. I do think, and I do want to see fucking I Spit on Your Grave because and you are going to get those reactions. Yes,
Yeah.
right. Take it, bitch, blah, blah, or else go, girl, you go, girl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
That kind of
but,
obvious shit. Even that's obvious.
I mean, but at the same time, fucking like, how can anyone be surprised that women wouldn't fucking like, if motherfuckers get excited because an asshole with a football runs across the fucking line
Yeah.
and makes it, how are you not gonna get excited that fucking it's kind of like, well, this person that you just saw go through all this shit, like makes it out the other side. Like, how much of the world's population is moved to action and fucking like center their lives around the story of a god who has come back as a man, who has gone through this incredible fucking ordeal so that he can rise from the dead and save everyone by doing that. Like, it's a hero story. And so it's kind of, we talked about this, the hero in these films has to go through fucking getting raped, and we have to watch it in order to see her get her fucking payback.
But that's the thing.
Because
With
it's not the same.
That's the thing.
It's not the same if it's an almost rape revenge story. Oh, this chick, a film about a chick who prevents rape.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not the same because it's not as extreme. You have to, it's like, it has to happen. It has to go all the way down in order to go all the way back up.
But that seems to be the standard, and that's where the question comes in, is that in order to make a film like this where a woman finds her value, finds her voice, finds her purpose, she has to go through a certain level of physical and sexual degradation in order to reach that place, which is troubling.
which is G.I. Jane too. You know what I mean? Like it's like it has to, at the very least, she has to get her ass kicked.
She has to get her ass kicked, but there's but this is different. This is a sexual. She has to be sexually violated. You can recover from a beating. If I get into it with someone and they punch me in the face, I'm going to bruise up, but in a few days, in a couple of days, in a week or so, that bruise is going to heal and it's going to go away, and I'm going to go back to looking the way I looked before. The psychological damage of rape, you don't ever get away from. You might be able to come to terms with it. You might be able to find a way to live with it, but you were permanently changed at that point. And I think that's the troubling aspect of films like that, of films like this, I Spit on Your Grave, Kill Bill, because, a lot of people forget she was pimped in that film. Her body lay in a coma in a hospital bed while an orderly had truckers come in there and fuck her. That was something that Tarantino needed. And if you remember it correctly, when I saw it in the theater, there was a certain level of laughter through some of that scene. That's the disturbing aspect of an audience complicit nature in watching something like that, where it's almost like we expect her to go through that in order for to
earn it.
Yeah, to earn it, but how to earn it? To earn it through our eyes. She needs to have that awakening. Now, I've read somewhere that with this director, there was the sense that she has that moment the night before where she's partying with these three men and she's dancing. Yes. So she's kind of whoring it up. And the idea is she can do that. And maybe she's not right for doing it, but she doesn't deserve to be sexually assaulted.
Right.
Now, that's true. That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're up there. This character is only a sexual presence in this movie. And I think that's the problem, is that you never really get to know who she is. You don't know who she is. You don't know what she's about. There's just that moment where the creep is talking to her and it's clear what's going on. He's going to rape her. Yeah. I mean, there's just no doubt. It's just a matter of, is he going to rape her or is it going to be a gang rape? Are these two men going to go at her? And Fargeat is very obvious with the piggish nature of both of them and excessive in her depiction of the friend.
The other one is like, one of them is like a pig.
Yeah, but he's stuffing his face in the same way that she would. She's hacking herself from, she's hacking herself in the substance from this. So that's an element of closing in on that mouth, amplifying the sound effects. I thought it was obvious. I thought it was cheap.
She's an obvious director.
Yeah, there's not. The fact that people are giving any kind of critical value
had a man
to
directed this. I'm just kidding.
I think if anything, this film. Well, I think if nothing else, this film shows.
Who actually think that.
Oh yeah, there's going to be assholes who think that. My attitude is this film shows that a woman can make as bad a film as any man. Now they should be allowed to do that. I think that you should be allowed to have as many women directing
Early
shit
Hollywood
like
had
this.
So many female directors, and people forget that.
Yeah. Have you ever seen?
Interesting.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Have you ever seen what?
No, go ahead. I want you to finish your thought. I'll get back to this. I won't forget.
That whole. I'm glad you brought that up, so that we can, because that was on my list of things to talk about. Is that so? As you said, this character, all these characters just exist to tell the story.
Yeah.
They're not real. They're not fully developed characters. They're just, and they're not even, they're not like deep metaphors or anything like that. They're just like stock characters, basically. Yeah. And so she is already like a plaything. And so when the two friends arrive a day early, and now the four of them have to interact that night, they're outside, there's a fire going, they're hanging out, drinking by the pool. And so the scene is a moment where she comes out and she dances provocatively for them. And it's primarily for her, her love interest, so-called, or whatever, the guy who's cheating on his wife with her, the boyfriend. But at the same time, it's for all of them. She's putting on this show, and they're all like into it or whatever. And then she wants to dance with the boyfriend, but he's like, nah. So then she dances with the fucking weasel. And she doesn't just dance with the weasel. She's there with her fucking cut-off shorts, but she's like dancing provocatively in front of and with this Weasley guy, and the Weasel's all fucking awkward, but all fucking turned on, and you know, of course, now that means like, oh my god, like she wants to fuck right then and there, because that's what that means, you know what I mean? And I don't remember if she necessarily, I don't think she grinds on him, but she does like gyrate like very close to his crotch. Her ass is like right there. So then the next day, he's like, all right, it's on. Like, that was it. Like, that was, you told me, you know?
Yeah.
So when I'm watching this, I said, this is interesting because the filmmaker put this, because she wrote it and directed it. So she put this scene in the film as that's what's the motivator. That's the catalyst, right? So now, as a viewer, you have to you can either just accept it and move on, or else, like, what we're doing is like, okay, like, all right, let's break that down. There are already boundaries that were not set and that were passed on multiple levels, clearly. She didn't set boundaries with this other guy. The character, and you have to just now impose these ideas on this character, because you don't get really anything from the character, because the character is so shallowly written, right? So the idea is that, well, like you said, no matter what, like, that's anything that happens before it gets to a physical level, and then once it gets to a physical level, anything that happens before it gets to actual like sex, like full on fucking penetrative sex. And so there are gates. Is the assumption, right? And at any point, a no in any of those like stages means, or, you know, in the did you get to home? How far did you get? Oh, I got to first base bullshit, like the 80s or whatever, whenever that comes from, kind of thing. This guy just thinks it's a home run just out the gate. But she didn't set boundaries. And so it's interesting. I was watching it and I was like, oh, that's interesting that the dude himself would allow his friend to cross boundaries with her, and that he would not be upset with her for crossing boundaries with a friend. But at the same time, you're seeing this and you're going, well, if the boundaries don't need to be, if he doesn't really give a fuck, is it because he's just like open-minded like that, or is it just because she's just another fucking one of his playthings to begin with? Um, and I mean, obviously, we end up seeing what it is. So it's not like she's just another fucking thing, and like he doesn't care because it's also like you can tell that he doesn't fucking really have respect for his weaselly ass friends anyway, because they're fucking lower too. Because he's so called like the alpha guy or whatever. So there's an element of the so-called like bro code. There's also an element of boundaries, but that boundary element can teeter into depending on who's viewing the film into like, well, look what she fucking like. She's the one that fucking put herself in that position. The reality is, you could have omitted that scene and just have him staring at her and interacting with her, and then the next day he fucking does that. But this gave him the ammunition, so to speak, or the fuel to go in and be like, well, why don't you like me? Whatever. He goes into this back and forth with her where he's basically interrogating her about what she fucking, what she likes. And he's like, well, you seemed to like me yesterday. You were all over me. So now she's on defense. And then the writer, filmmaker puts in this fucking, where it was like, whoa, like, okay. She tells him that he's not her type. So he's like, why not? Basically. And then she says, you're too small.
Yeah.
And like, for the fucking male ego, especially for the fragile male ego, like, ouch, you're too small. So it's interesting that she put that in there, and that it was tense, even though we all knew it was going to happen. It was just tense, and we were able to, me as a man, like, to watch that and feel like, ugh, like, but then the counter is like, well, the Camille Paglia's are obviously a controversial fucking, at this point, like, very much not relevant figure, but 90s fucking out there fucking counter feminist or whatever, who would say like, you think women are that fragile that like, that once they get raped, they're fucking broken forever? You know what I mean? Like, she has I mean, her shit is extreme, but she would say, look, this is going back to fucking, the war of the sexes, the battle of the sexes, whether it's rape or combat or fucking, art or seduction. This is a war that are happening between the forces of the masculine and the forces of the feminine. And that's what makes the world go round, motherfucker. And so, like, she'd probably be like, well, she should have cut their fucking heads off, and it should have been Madonna instead of this chick. And you know what I mean? Like, and because Madonna's a play on fucking the virgin and the fucking whore. And like, fuck it, like, do it, cut their heads off, peg the patriarchy, you know? But don't fucking bitch about it. Just fucking do it. You know what I mean? Like, so I mean, there are multiple ways of doing this. And also, Camille Paglia also considered fucking the fight between Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi in whatever of the fucking Star Wars prequels to be operatic high cinema. So like, she could also be fucking wrong. You know what I mean? Like,
see, everything that you're talking about would make for a better movie, but what we have here, and I'm not sure. I think this is a director who thinks they're too. I think this is a director who thinks they're better than they are. Number one, but also actors that don't have the ability to bring anything of what you just described to the performances. There's no subtlety to that. It's all indicated. There's no backstory. There's no, it's like these people just come on. These people come into the frame in order to get this exploitation done. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel lived in, or the way that anybody would actually react. When you start describing this friend, this Frenchman who is coming at her, he's so obvious right from the beginning of walking into that room that he has contempt for her. There's no moment where he thinks, and I'm not saying this is what you said, but there is no moment where he thought maybe there was something between the two of them. His intention was, she's a pig and she will suffer now. And I just thought that shit was just too obvious, or it just didn't go far enough with that in order to make him worse than he could be. There was a better performance out of that fat bastard, with less time, and it's just, I just thought the whole fucking thing was, if you're going to do a female revenge story directed by a woman, show me something that I haven't seen. Everything here is by the book, by the numbers, in keeping with the genre itself, which has never been very, it has never really, it has never been what I felt was a true exploration of what this story could possibly be. She becomes an avenging angel, and to play the rest of the movie in silence the way she does would have been good for a better actor. She's just not it. It's as though the act itself, the violence that you have seen and the violence that you create in your head, the director is using your perception of what you've seen to tell her story for her. And I don't think that works. It might work on some audiences, but it doesn't for me.
Girl with a Dragon Tattoo is one that I think the performance lends itself to that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's part of a larger story. It's part of a larger story that involves the same theme in terms of the big villain of the picture.
Yeah.
It's the thematics of violence against women that the author, to begin with, was playing with, Larson.
Mm-hmm.
But that performance was layered and intense and strong, but also vulnerable, and there are things happening there. There's more to it. Obviously, this is, especially if we look at the American,
the Fincher film
version.
Yeah,
the Fincher film, it's a better director, better performances,
mm-hmm.
Better acting, better script. So again, there are characters that, and we did this with Substance, where it's like, okay, well, who could it have been? Who is? I think there's a and I think there's a Gina Gershon film, where she's a rock star.
Yeah.
No, she's not a rock star. She's like in a band.
Yeah.
She's not a rock star, but she's in a band, and I feel like there's a scene. Let me see if I can find it. I'm trying to.
It's called "Pray to Rock and Roll" or something like that, or
something like that, maybe. Where
"Soul to Rock and Roll" or something. I don't remember what it is.
I feel like there might be a scene like that where it's like this the girls get revenge.
Mm-hmm.
And with her, she's able to pull it off in a different way, just because of the there's a sexuality about her, but there's also a toughness, and you can see that in fucking that late 90s
Bound?
Bound. Yeah, you can see that in that as well. I can't find Pray for Rock and Roll.
Is that what
It's
it's called?
Prey.
Yes.
Pray, yeah. So yeah, she's it's casting also, you know what I mean? It's there's a lot to it. And it just and it's of no fault. It's not like this. Who's the woman who Matilda Lutz? It's not like she didn't give a fuck. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like it just didn't work. It just wasn't. It was the material that she was given. It's the way, you know. It's all of it. It's one of those things that we want to explore. So it's like, okay, so let's watch more rape films, and then talk about them, and so-called try to have a good time in the process. You know what I mean? But at the same time, it's kind of like we are shitting on this person. We're shitting on the film. She has higher expectations because she's a woman. Because it's like, well, if you're gonna do this, and that, you know, that's not fair. That's not fair. But it's to be expected because she's going into it on purpose, but going into it is like, well, giving a different perspective. Every time, whether you're a man or woman, every time you do something within a genre, the expectation is you better bring something of your own to it.
Yeah. Which obviously, is fair. I think that's fair.
But that is fair. And obviously, as a woman, she knows that she's going to now have this additional hurdle, which is to say, okay, you're dealing with this subject matter, but now you're going against the grain on this just by virtue of the fact that you're choosing this material. Okay, so what do you got? What do you have to bring to it that now is going to be your shit? Whether you would consider it a so-called feminist thing or not, like a Catherine Bigelow. Catherine Bigelow. The only expectation I have of Catherine Bigelow is that I expect it to be good because her shit is good. If Catherine Bigelow were to make a film like this, I don't know that I would necessarily have she's already done so much tough shit that it's kind of like, just have it be good. And then we'll see what she says about it.
Yeah.
But this kind of like, okay, and remember, we started the substance and then we went back. So then now we have it might be a different story if we just started off with this film and we didn't know about the substance, because there's not a trend in terms of subject matter. Now we have a female director doing material involving the female body, female characters at the hands of men in these different worlds. What the female does about it, how she tries to take control of her body, try to take back control of her body, of the aging process, of actual physical control of her life and her body, life and limb. So it's kind of like, okay, well, yeah, what do you got? What's different? Are you coming from this, like, are you going to show us something that the limitations that, are you going to go beyond the limitations of these male directors that have fucking done these barf bag fucking Ebert fucking critiques? What's the difference? You probably got the central one is that it wasn't the rape wasn't like super voyeuristic.
Yeah.
So, and my thing is that, like, that's it. Not only because just as a female, but I'm saying in general, as a fucking, like, as just a director, like, that's it. Like, I don't necessarily need to see how fucked up and horrible it is. We have the benefit of just watching a movie, and we can just talk about it. We would say, I feel this, I feel that. We can criticize every fucking film. We can find something wrong with every fucking film that we watch. And the two people who listen to us can either agree with us or disagree with us. And it ultimately, in terms of, like, the universe, it means nothing. But in terms of the fucking hour and a half that we're fucking sitting there watching it means everything.
Well, you mentioned that, and I have to wonder. We've seen this story told through the male gaze. Catherine Noah, Michael Winner with Death Wish, Catherine Bigelow, certain aspects with Strange Days, Kimberly Pierce with Boys Don't Cry.
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, that hits a lot harder. That hits a lot harder.
Not a revenge story, though. Is there something about the revenge story itself that is limiting? Or does, like, for example, with Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, does it have to become a bigger story in order for it to be moving and more powerful? If you watch Kill Bill is fun, but it's empty. It's really junk food. There's not a lot there. I know that's gonna, maybe that won't piss off anybody who listens to us, because they've heard us go against Tarantino numerous times on this podcast. But it is like, it's popcorn, it's filler, it's nothing. It's ramen, basically. You might enjoy it while you're watching it, but you don't get the sense that you've learned anything. And this seems to be a subject matter that has more potential for that. Like, in the original idea for Death Wish, the Bronson character wasn't supposed to be Bronson. It was supposed to be a meek, quiet man who discovers this level of violence in him. It should have been somebody like a Woody Allen or a Dustin Hoffman, is what I think they originally intended.
Dustin Hoffman had already done the Straw Dogs thing.
And I was going to bring that up too. As much as I don't particularly care for Straw Dogs, that is a better handling of the material, I think, because it does examine who we have the potential to become. So there's a part of me that wonders, because she so readily becomes this other character. It's almost like, and this is, I think this is one of the troubling aspects of the rape revenge genre, is that in order for the woman, and you could argue all women, because that's what these movies basically do, all women need to go through the violence of an act like this in order to come out the other end with a true understanding of the power of the woman. I mean, that movie was I Spit on Your Grave was originally titled Day of the Woman. So yeah. I mean, there's it's cheap and it's exploitative. Not as much as I Spit on Your Grave as a title, but I think the idea that a woman's true fulfillment, and the idea that she can become all that she can be, to quote the Army, is dependent on that level of violence.
Yeah,
on that level
boot camp.
So that's where the problem becomes. And I mean, it's you see it on a lot of TV shows, especially dramatic television shows. When they run out of ideas, rape the main character. There's a lot of films where films and television where, in order for the woman to find some kind of purpose. She has to go through not just physical violence, but a rape. And that's troubling because it asks us to, in a weird way, to say, a woman needs this to awaken some kind of warrior spirit in her.
Well, yeah, because it becomes a fucking, it's a rite of passage almost.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's the most problematic aspect of all of this. Either your daughter or your wife is raped, and the man has to go out there to avenge and
that's how
establish.
You judge a man too.
That's how you judge a man too. Yeah, exactly. Or she has becomes this force.
Well, that's I think when you ask, is the genre itself just limiting? I think so, because it's because from a story perspective, if we look at it like just from the story as a writing perspective, just in the simple like steps of in a formulaic way, the inciting incident is the rape, right? So if you follow these kind of like expectations of the formulas of a story, there's something that happens that in every story, if you put that formula on it, that takes the character out of their ordinary world and sets them on this journey, this irreversible, to play on that, this irreversible journey towards whatever now their goal is. With this subgenre, you're starting with the rape, and so the rape sets everything off. It's the motivating action. It ends up becoming the focus, and it's so powerful and so motivating in the beginning, and so fucked up. And it has, in order to like really set the stakes really high, a lot of times these directors are like, I'm gonna fucking show everything, that it's the rest of the film just as a story thing becomes anticlimactic, because it's kind of like, yes, you're gonna go out and you're gonna kill all these people, but the killing of these people still, even those scenes, as crazy as they may get, they're still not as crazy as that opening fucking rape scene. This is me saying that without having seen like all these multiple fucking films. Like, you can watch that trailer that I'm telling you about, if I spit on your grave, and they don't show the rape. And that already lets me know that the rape is crazier. We all know the fucking rape is crazier than her cutting off his dick in a bathtub.
Yeah.
Even if they show it. Even if they show a prosthetic dick. Yeah, it's fucked up. But what I'm getting at is that it becomes, it's harder to build and build and build on a story like that, because it's almost like at this point it's all downhill, in the sense that it's like, we know what's fucking happening. Like, the character has this moment and all she has to do is pick off all of these other people. It's kind of like watching a slasher movie. It's just kind of like, okay, like, how are all these people going to die? The only thing is that it's almost like to me, the climax is in the beginning. Because it's the fucking hardest, shocking, fucking intense scene. And now it's just checking off the boxes of killing the perpetrators. And then even if you have the final boss guy, that you kill in some kind of elaborate way, and he suffers the most, it's almost like, is his suffering still going to, in terms of just story, is it going to pay off the way that in the beginning, everything got set in motion. So in that sense, it's kind of like, it is limiting because you can't develop these characters when they're trying to escape getting killed by this revenge-seeking female.
Yeah.
Or even if it's not a rape thing, just a revenge thing in general is kind of like, depending on what it is it like, you can go deep if you do, okay, Batman, like, this is how he got to this point. But then after, you can only go so far because then ultimately it's going to be, well, now he's fighting this character, and this character is this way because of this, and so he's a villain because of that. So at least you learn about the villain. But now it's like, okay, so now you've got the Joker. Okay, this is the Joker's backstory. This is okay. Now Penguin. Okay, now you're just you bad guy.
Yeah.
Then you end up in fucking the Avengers. You end up like, well, and this is, I think, why Alan Moore is like, these stories need to be told in the medium or through the medium of comic or graphic novel, because you can visually do things that you cannot do in a film. So in a film, you're just shuffling in and out. You're just replacing them. And that beyond it lends itself to all of these issues of, is it gratuitous? Is it this? Is it that? Because it has to be strong enough to set this character in motion and horrible enough to really justify and want the viewer to want these people also to suffer and be killed, so-called to like set things right. But at the end of the day, all these characters are dead, and like basically what you said, well, she still got raped. Like, it's not like killing them and doing all these things is going to really, like, you can't get her back to where she was before. And if a character is trying to get from point A to the beginning point to the end of the point, and the character has to change, the character already has changed in the beginning of the film when she gets raped.
Yeah.
So where's she going?
And that's the limitations of the film, because we don't know. We don't even know who she was before that rape.
Well, all we know is that she's going to just kill him.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, now what? You know what I mean? Like, at least with Batman, it's like, well, he's trying to create a sense of order in a world that he feels is out of order. And he feels that, the limitations of law and order and the judicial system and the cops and all that they're not equipped to deal with the level of evil, etc., that exists in the world. So, vigilante justice is what it is. So you need an anti-hero in order to balance it out. So ultimately, like, he's trying to get there, and all of these characters or these villains are just hurdles, obstacles in his way to ultimately try to set the world right. And that's why you can keep feeding him more and more fucking villains until it's ultimately like, well, it's a futile fucking cause, because like you can't win. But you know that he wants something larger than just to kill the villain. And that creates more drama because he has to wrestle, like, that's his role in the world that he's taken on himself. In this revenge genre, it's kind of like, well, is she gonna go off and like, what is she gonna do now? Like, it's very like self-contained, and therefore it's kind of like, what do? Do you fucking show her killing these guys and then you figure out why, and then you show the rape scene at the end? That's more, climactically it'll probably be more intense, because it's like, because you see it. You see the buildup. I mean, it's a reverse, but you get what I'm saying.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's hard. Because it's the focus, it becomes this thing of like, how do you get such a strong... So I think it's not only like statements about morality, statements about the so-called battle of the sexes, statements about feminism, rape, people having power over their own bodies, etc., women, blah, blah. I think also just from a story perspective, it's just kind of like, on the one hand, it's just hard because it creates that limitation. It creates the scenario where you have a big opening scene, or big. It may not be the first scene, but it's towards the beginning. That puts her in that situation. That puts her in motion. Now what?
Well, it has places to go. It's just not an exciting way of getting there. And the film doesn't deliver in that respect. So, ultimately, very disappointing. And,
but there's something about human beings that they want to see. They want to see a balance. They want to see things set right. So there is on some level, I think human beings have the need for these types of stories, because it's kind of like, if that's one of the take anything that's like the killing of your kids, the abduction of your kid, the Taken is that. The thing is that Taken, he's trying to get her, so he's still trying to go after her. If Taken starts off with them abducting his daughter and raping and murdering her, and she's dead, and we see him like we see them doing all that to her, and then now he's going and killing them, it's not the same.
Yeah, it's not at all.
Because viewers want him to be able to get her and bring her back. He has to go basically into the belly of the whale, all that. Joseph Campbell, like he has to go. He has to endure the trials. He has to fucking do all that stuff in order to bring the treasure back from the dragon, his daughter. These films, there's kind of like, there's no coming back. There's no, so all you're doing, all it serves is kind of like, it's just justice. It's just revenge. This movie is just revenge, which is, I think, like I said, people need, or people want those kind of stories, because it does give us something to experience that, okay, people got there. It's like this Hays Code that we have, where we have to see the villain fucking be punished. There's that. But ultimately, that's all it is. And there's also the fact that it's kind of like, well, victims and villains is it's gonna be basic. If the victim is part villain or the villain is part victim, then now we're talking. So it is limited, and it's just a revenge story. Revenge is just about revenge.
Quite simply and succinctly put. Thank you very much.
BuyMeACoffee.com/watch RickRamos. BuyMeACoffee.com/watch RickRamos. This episode goes to Stephen Palmer. Thank you for doing what you do. We're going to do what we do. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.